Have you always wanted to know how to can for long-term shelf-stable food for you, for your family? Has it always made you nervous? You didn't know where to start. We're going to discuss water bathing. Water bathing is a great first step for those who are beginning this journey in handling, knowing what you're putting into your body, being able to control those ingredients so that you don't see illnesses, diseases based upon what is in our supply chain food. So what is water bath canning? First of all, you just need your standard stock pot with a heavy bottom. You don't want a cheap aluminum pot. You want something that's going to control the amount of heat that is going into the pot because your cans are going to be inside of that pot. You want a pot that is deep, and like I said, you want a very sturdy bottom on your pot. So let's talk about canning in general. Pressure canning and water bath canning. What determines what path forward you use? It's the acidity level in the food that you're wanting to can. Fruits. There are so many fruits that can be water bath canned, and we're going to discuss that method here shortly. If the acidity level is too low, it's non-acidic. For example, corn, meats, hamburger, there's no acid in those. You cannot, and I will repeat, you cannot water bath can those items. In order to water bath can, it has to be a high acidic item. For those foods who do not have high acidity, as I'd mentioned, corn, green beans, meats, those require according to the FDA guidelines, those require a pressure canner to can them for a long-term shelf stability. There is folk canning where there are many individuals, and our ancestors, they did in fact water bath can everything. They didn't go to the pressure canners to do it. But as time has gone on, the FDA has stated that it's healthier, safer to do the pressure canning method for low acidity foods. So today I am going to be water bathing some cherries. I had some cherries in my refrigerator. I thought we would munch on them, but we didn't as much as I had thought. I don't want these to go bad. And so I am going to water bath can them because of the acidity level in cherries is high enough that I can water bath can them. This is a list of high acidic foods that can be water bath canned according to the FDA guidelines. You can stop and screenshot this for future reference if you'd like. So as we know, cherries have pits in them, and I have found that the best tool available is a cherry pitter. You put your cherries in there, and of course you de-stem these. These have all been washed, and you just put your cherries, I like to put them stem side up, push down, and it actually pushes all the pits to the bottom section of this tool. It may split them, but that's fine. And they are all pitted, and we can move forward on can. So now we're going to start canning the cherries. Since we've pitted them, we've done the entire process needed for that. A laundry list of things that are going to be very helpful for you is rings and the flat lids. The flat lids cannot be reused for canning purposes. Now, if you wanted to, if you opened up a jar that you had canned of food and you want to use this flat lid to store your herbs or whatever it may be, that's fine. But for canning purposes, your flat lids can only be used once, unless they are those reusable ones, which I have never used. It's good to have a funnel so that it helps with the mess, less handling of the item that you're canning. You're going to have your ring lids. You're going to have your jars. I have wide mouth pint jars. I like the wide mouth. It just seems easier to access. Utensils can get in there easier. You have wide mouth pint jars, and you also have wide mouth quart jars. Today we're using the pints. The reason I'm going with pints today is that we're looking at having a full slate on these cherries. I'm going to be raw packing them, meaning I'm not cooking them before canning them. I'm going to let them cook during the water bath process. I am not going to add any type of syrup to this, like a simple syrup or anything like that. I want a blank slate. That way it allows me, when I want to pull these off the shelf, to use an ice cream, homemade ice cream, I can do so. If I would want to make a strawberry syrup for cherry syrup for pancakes, if I wanted to make a cherry syrup for ice cream, if I wanted to make a cherry pie, cherry turnovers, cherry crumble, anything that I wanted, I can open up the cherries. It's a blank slate, and I can then turn those cherries into whatever product that I want based upon the seasonings, if I would want to add sugar, etc. But we're just raw packing these today. All my jars, and always sanitize, sterilize your jars. These have all been sterilized and they're ready to go. While handling your jars in your water bath, this is something you'll need because you don't want to touch those hot jars. Because in water bath canning, your jars are completely submerged in water. The next thing that's very useful that you would want is, this is white vinegar, and I have it in this little convenient push pump. And what we're going to do and why this is needed, 2 reasons. The first reason is after, and this is anytime you are canning, you want to use white vinegar. When you are putting your product in your jars, you will have this funnel on there. But honestly, there are times when things can seep down upon to the rim of this jar. That can inhibit a good seal during your canning process. So what we're going to do is we use white vinegar. White vinegar is very good at breaking up the fat solids in the event you are canning meat. It's very good at removing any debris on the surface of the jar, and we will just wipe the rim with white vinegar. And then we would put our flat lid on, and then we will put our screw-on lid on. And when you screw your lids, you're not gonna, no. When you put your screw-on lid onto your jar, once they're filled up, of course, it will be fingertip tight. It's not going to go anymore. I'm not pushing it. I'm just trying to brush it shut, turn it, but it's not going. That's as tight as you want. If you get it too tight, the flat lid that is right here, when you are actually closing it and sealing it, it can buckle, and you could have product come out of the jars. So it's called fingertip tight. You don't want it strongly secured. It's going to vacuum seal on its own to where you don't need to have this so tight on the jar that it's going to buckle. So let's get started filling our jars. Now we want 1.5 inches of headspace, and of course we don't have that. So that we're going to get rid of some of that. Now, what do I mean about headspace? From the top of this rim to where the beginning or the top of the fruit is, or whatever product is in your jar, you want 1.5 inches. So myself, as a ongoing rule, I go to this large rim. I'm using a ball jar. Most canning jars have this, but you do want 1.5 inches of headspace there. This allows for the heat, the cooking, the bubbling, the boiling to occur within the jar and not siphon out underneath your lid that is secure while it's going through the canning process. All right. I'm first going to get these filled up. Much easier with this. Instead of this way I can control it. Why didn't I do that to begin with? As you can see, we have a little bit more room. We're good. And we didn't have enough for an entire pint, so we're going to munch on these. The next step is to add some liquid to our cans, our jars. And as I mentioned, I want a blank slate, so I am just adding warm water. Again, when I take these out, I can turn these into whatever I want. I can add a simple sugar syrup at that time. That one I got a little bit too much in. We're going to pour that out. Adding the liquid, we're still keeping in mind of the 1 inch headspace here. And I notice in this one, I put a little too many cherries in there. There's that one cherry that's sitting up there. We're going to take those two out, put them in our Let's Munch on Those Cherries this afternoon, like this. We have our water in our jars. We're at a 1 inch headspace. Now we're going to put our white vinegar on our rims. When you're deciding on what type of liquid you're going to put in your jars, keep in mind if you are putting a hot, and this is just not with the cherries, this is any type of canning. If you are putting a hot liquid in your jar, you want to make sure that your pot that you are using for your canning has hot water in it. Also, you don't want such a difference in the temperature of what is in your jar to the water in your pot to be so drastic, because it will, of course, break your jars. I have lukewarm water in my pot right now. It is heating. This is lukewarm water. So I'm going to go ahead and put my lids on. Unfortunately, I could not find my little tool. It's a magnet. It allows you to use the magnet, put it in the water, grab your lid, and put it on. I can't locate it, so I'm going to be grabbing them out with my hand. But that is a very useful tool. I would definitely recommend it. I've put my white vinegar on my paper towel. I am now going to make sure that I wipe off the rims of my jars to make sure they are very clean. Also, when we were discussing the white vinegar, I mentioned you want to use white vinegar for 2 reasons. The second reason is while you're canning, based upon what type of water you have, be it well water, city water, etc., you can get a white film on the outside of your jars, the residue from the water and the heat, boiling that out, the minerals, etc., out of the water. If you put a little splash of white vinegar in your water in your pot, you won't experience that. If you don't put the white vinegar in your pot, that residue on your cans is washable. You just need to make sure that you wash your cans, and you should also be washing all of your cans after you've canned them, especially if you've had siphoning, a little siphoning from underneath the lid before it actually vacuum sealed during the process. We're going to go ahead and put the lids on. As I had mentioned, these are sterilized. I do not have my magnet, which I strongly suggest everyone uses. You lie these flat on your jars. And as I mentioned, we finger tight put those on. We do not want them so tight that they're going to buckle. And these are ready to go in the water bath. As I had mentioned, water bath canning is a great first step for new canners. You just need a good stock pot. That's it. Heat is on high. I'm getting this up to a boiling point, but the water is a lukewarm. I'm going to put my jars in here. And as you can see, they're submerged, but they're really not submerged enough. I know it's hard for you to see, but I want them 2 inches underwater from the top. So I'm going to add more water to this. And that did it. And that was just another 6 cups of water. These are completely submerged. I'm going to get this to a boiling. This will boil. When it gets to that boiling point, you're going to let that boil for 25 minutes. But you don't start that countdown until you see the boiling. Our timer's gone off for 25 minutes. I've let the boiling stop. And this is where that tool comes in really handy. And ding dong, Angie did not put the white vinegar in my pot when I was canning. This is the residue that I was talking about, but that's going to wash off. And we've got our cherries in there. Again, that's the white residue. That's all going to pop off. You'll start hearing pinging. You may have just heard that little noise. That was a ping. That's the temperature difference from being inside of the pot to being out into the cool air, and it's just that vacuum seal on the top. When those jars cool down, I will do 2 tests on them. The first one is to make sure that the lid has no give, that little pop, that it's completely flat and has no give to it. I will also take the rings off, the ring portion of the lids off of the jar, and I will hold it by the top to make sure it has a good seal. And if it has good seal and there's no give in the lid, those are a-okay to go onto your shelf. Of course, I will wash them off because of that residue. And anytime you can a jar, once they're cooled down, you should wash them in case there was any siphoning, which we did not have in this case. But you still should wash them. And you should not store your jars with the ring lids on them. You don't want to do that. It's just a safety concern that way. In case a jar flat lid gets a little bit loose or something like that, you're going to know it. If that ring's on there, you're not going to really know that until too late. So too late does mean it starts stinking and things. So we're good. So we've had our first step in canning, doing the water bath canning. And I expect we're going to have more videos on how to can, how to make food shelf stable for your family, cut back on costs going to the grocery store, knowing what you're putting into your family's bodies. This is a skill we all should know. We need to know how to put food on our shelves long term. Stay with me, friends. We're going to be doing more of these. You have a wonderful day. Stay healthy.